him he's free, but take away the only tool that he has to use, tell him he's free, but take away the only tool that he has to use to enjoy freedom with. Take that away from him. Put him in the world and tell him he's free, and take his legs off from under him. Take his arms off. Most of you don't know it, but the crucifix itself is a sign of what was coming upon the world. Not that Jesus the prophet is done like that, but a people that's born without father, a people that's born without leadership, a people that's born without of a mother having no father. Mother means society. Father means leadership. So Jesus is a sign of what's going to happen to the world, or what was going to happen to the world. The ancient people knew it. The devil himself knew it. And the devil himself put the image of Jesus on the cross as a sign of what the devil was going to do to the world. That he was going to bring the poor masses, those without leadership, without social fathers, without governmental fathers. Look how long we lived in America, 300 years, without a father in government to defend us. Is that right? Almost 300 years. A whole people lived in America without a father in government to defend us. Now, if you want to see a real strong sign that has all of the connections with the crucifixion of Jesus, look at our people for almost 300 years hanging on the limbs of the crucifiers. Now, you want to see Jesus? Don't look back there 2,000 years ago. That physical thing never happened. Never did they take a man and hang him up on a physical cross like that. You say, well, how did we get that story? From the builders of grafted artificial mentality. From the builders of the lie that was fabricated to put you in the condition that you're in. That's where you got it. Now look, brothers and sisters. The Holy Quran says that Jesus is a sign. Not only is the man a sign, the book says that Jesus and his mother are a sign. Is that right? Not only the man is a sign, but the mother too is a sign. A sign that there's going to be a people born in a society who has no father to acknowledge it, and will have to cry to a spiritual father, because that's the only father they'll be able to identify with. Do you understand? And the world will mistreat it, reject its goodness. And who can you find any better in the world than the poor? If you want to get a feeling from people's hearts, don't go to the rich. If you want to get a feeling from people's hearts, don't go to the learned. Go to the poor. Go to the ignorant, and you'll get a feeling from their heart. Look. Jesus was a sign of the heart that's in the poor. Sign of the heart that's in the ignorant people. And the pouring out of that blood, brother, is the pouring out of your life. Not the life of a man that was supposed to have been crucified 2,000 years ago. The nailing of the hands was not the nailing of the hands of a man 2,000 years ago. It means that this big block of the public, this big block of people, because they had no father, and they spoke from the only thing they knew to speak from the heart, from the Spirit of God in themselves. They had no eloquent tongue to defend themselves in the halls of politics and science. So all they could do is speak from what they had. That was the Spirit of God. Is that right? And for doing that, they nailed the hand. It means make it impossible for you to be financially successful. Nail your feet. It means make it impossible for you to go away from a persecuting environment to a better one. You can't even walk out of the world. Everywhere you go, you carry the burden of a stigma on you. You're a nigger and a beast of prey everywhere you go. Is that right? So though you're moving physically, you're making no movement at all. Your social feet are nailed to the cross. Is that right? Now look at the book, you see yourself. The book says that Jesus and his mother's a sign. Now study the Christian teachings, and you'll find that the preacher knows about it. You'll find that his mother, Mary, is just one Mary. But there are two more Marys in the book. In fact, there are many Marys. But there are three major Marys. Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary, the sister of Martha, Mary, the prostitute that was reformed. Is that right? It is talking about nothing but the three types of society. That's all it's talking about. Society have leadership on three levels. One is on the level of the doctors of law, the political leadership. Another is on the level of the spiritual people. And right at the bottom you have those that don't have any leadership. Is that right? Jesus was born from those. His mother didn't become righteous because the Jews taught her righteousness. His mother became righteous because she belonged to a people that had no place in Israel. And they had nothing to turn to but Almighty God. So Jesus' mother, being a sign, a symbol of the poor people, the rejected people, she became the holiest of all. Do you understand? All right. So Jesus was born of that woman, that rejected woman, that woman that had no real husband. Is that right? Woman that was accused of fornication and adultery because nobody would own her children. Is that right? All praises to Allah. Okay. So if you want to see Christ, see yourself. They laughed at Christ, mocked Christ. Here is the fool that would be king of the Jews. Let's give him a crown of thorns. That's what they have done to the masses, the deprived masses of the world. They say, here are people that once had a glorious seat in the high places of ancient civilization. Asia and Africa and the islands of the tropics. Let us now give them a crown of thorns. Racism. Jesus Christ, your Savior. Democracy without a taste of democracy. Christ without a taste of salvation. Let's give them this crown of thorns that pierce into their brain and kill the nerve centers. See, a thorn has needles on it. And Yaqub, he had the nurses stick needles into the brains of the newborn babies, you understand? So here this crown of thorns got needles on it that pierce the head and go into the nerve centers and numb the brain. Give him a crown of thorns. Laugh at him. Say, here is the king. Look at the king. Is that right? Says they put on his head a crown of thorns. And when they didn't just let the thorns be placed on his head. Says they crushed it into his head. And they show the blood coming out of his head. We think it means blood. Doesn't mean blood. It means your common sense. They press upon your head the hypocritical teachings of freedom and and salvation through faith in the Trinity. And that thing piercing into your mind kills your brain and make you bleed out all of your common senses. You think I'm joking? You think I'm just talking to charm you or to interest you? Go get any authority on the Bible, and I'll do it this evening. And if you're tired, I'll stay here by myself on the floor. And just let one man stay here to report it. And I'll prove to you before the preacher, before a bishop, before a pope, before a rabbi, if Jesus could appear right here himself and disagree with me, I would make him confess that I speak the truth. Allahu Akbar. I'm not speaking from guesswork. I'm a scientist. I've tested my findings by every rule of scientific investigation. And I've also received the word from heaven saying it is done. So you can play if you want to, I'm not playing. And if just a handful of people follow me in sincerity, we are going to shake this world up and down. And going to bring back milk, whole milk. Milk that you see cream on top of. This old world's leadership got weak, and people on the low levels of society began to see the defects in the heaven of the wicked world. They saw that heaven wasn't as shiny and as pure as it looked to be. They began to question the knowledge on high. Before they began to suspect the knowledge was wrong, men without great knowledge just couldn't accept the conduct of a world that claimed to be right and was behaving as though it knew nothing of any righteousness at all. The Honorable Frederick Douglass, in one of his addresses, perhaps you read it in Jet magazine, indicted the Western leadership, America, with such clear, clean-cutting words. That he brought converts even from their ranks to support the movement for justice. Is that right? Powerful and eloquent orator. Great man, Frederick Douglass. But before his time, there was Nat Turner. Black man that couldn't understand a society looking so beautiful in the face and being so cruel in its kicks, kicking him down in the dirt, stumping him under the ground. So he rose up not being able to diagnose the disease in the mind of the Western society, but he just knew that what they preached didn't agree with their action, and rose up and rebelled, lost his life and a few lives of his slave brothers, but he sure left a mark, a pain in the conscience of the beast we call Western civilization. Is that right? Behind him others rose. Frederick Douglass, with his preaching, he awoke the conscience of American Caucasians. Is that right? But before he awoke enough conscience, there was a fanatical Caucasian, John Brown, who read the Bible and he couldn't reconcile what was going on with the teachings of the Bible. So John Brown, a fanatical Caucasian, got on his horse and got him an army and went out trying to slave masters. Is that right? We're talking about leadership. Where did this come from? Where did Frederick Douglass get his leadership from? Who led him? Who missioned John Brown? Who missioned Nat Turner? All praise is due to Allah. There was a man called David Walker. Is that right? A slave. Up north, trying to enjoy a little freedom. David Walker preached, and if you could get the book called the David Walker Appeals and read those appeals that he made to the conscience of this artificial mentality, you will bear me witness that that man's preachings compares with the preachings of the prophets such as Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel. Those men didn't preach with any more spiritual and moral effectiveness than did David Walker. That man preached, I'm telling you, and his word went home. But do we know of any prophet of the Belialians in America? No. Man, I preached the prophets of Israel, but didn't get one single Belialian to say, this is our prophet. Why? Because we were thoroughly destroyed, thoroughly dead, completely insensitive, 5 senses gone. Is that right? Crown of Christianity upon our heads, loaded with deception, loaded with lies and deceit, killing our 5 senses, so we couldn't respond to any great leader. All right, that wasn't all. Behind them came Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, great men that championed the cause of the dignity of the Belialian people in America. Is that right? Great men, great orators. But how much support did they get from us? We followed them as long as there was a sizable number of Caucasians praising them. But as soon as the Caucasians stopped saying he was great, we forgot all about the greatness of our great hero. Is that right? Couldn't get any leadership in America, could we? No, because the whole atmosphere, all of the thoughts in the air is designed for your mind to breathe in destruction that will poison and undermine the development of strong leadership. You don't want no leadership. All you want is Jesus. Somebody that you can't identify with. Somebody you can't touch. You can't walk with him. You can go and see him, and you come off your trip, you walk with the world. Identifying with dead leaders, bygone leaders, or people who don't have any governmental life in their bodies. That's all they can do is identify with dead leaders. In the history of our people, the only successful man has really been myself. I'm the only one who has been successful in coming up without support and keeping the forces intact, saving the leadership. You might say, well, didn't your father do it? No. When Master Farrar left my father, his movement went down to almost nothing. 10 years passed, nothing. 20 years passed, nothing. It took him almost until 1948 to get something started again. But Almighty Allah blessed me with the knowledge of the tricks that goes on in this world. Not just on the physical plane, but on the spiritual plane. And way up there where the fire is, where the light of the sun is, he showed me the devil climb all the way up to the sun. Showed me how he go up to the sun and bring fire down from heaven. So he couldn't destroy this. Didn't know how to come at me. Heard me speak and say, what in the world has happened overnight? The man don't sound like Elijah. Don't sound like Moses. Sounds something like Jesus. Has Jesus returned? Yes, he has, in full force. Praise is due to Allah. So our great heroes came up, and as long as they could attract the attention of the Caucasian, we were attracted. But as soon as the world forgot them, we buried our leaders. All praise is due to Allah for this day and time. Noble Drew Ali preached, turned people away from the Christian church, turned them away from the Christian culture, turned them toward Morocco. But how successful he was. Soon as the Caucasians attacked him, the majority of our people turned their backs on him. They are stronger now than they've ever been. Then along came the silk peddler. That old strange Arab that didn't act like no Arab and certainly didn't act like any Western Caucasian person, but looked like a Caucasian and used names, titles and expressions and symbols and names of the Arab people, but taught something that looked totally different. Is that right? Sneaked in under the cover of darkness. Sneaked in under the cover of symbolism. And left a heavy symbolic message. And he knew just where to put it. He didn't give it to the political-minded Bilalian or to the academic-minded Bilalian. He gave it to an old Southern Baptist-minded Bilalian whose only knowledge was symbolism. Because you know the preacher, he's preached so much symbolism until he forget his tongue sometimes and just start saying, see, that preacher, he talks so much code language, and so sometimes he get out of touch with his code and he start going into his own code. So Master Farad knew where to bring his symbolism. He brought it to the son of a Baptist preacher who was dissatisfied with the leadership of his father. Is that right? One who wouldn't be so much concerned about changing the teachings of Christ or changing the teachings of the Old Testament. He wouldn't care because he never accepted it anyway. He had his own ideas about the book. Is that right? So Master Farad searched all over the streets of Detroit and elsewhere and finally found Elijah Poole. And he dropped that heavy symbolism on Elijah Poole. Along came Elijah Muhammad, a man that was put on to the tricks of the Caucasian mind and had faith enough in his teacher and in the teachings that he got to hold on to the formula regardless to what. If the formula don't produce today, hold on to it. In the 1930s, the formula didn't produce for Elijah Muhammad. In the 1940s, the formula didn't produce for the arm of Elijah Muhammad. Even in the 1950s, the formula didn't produce for the arm of Elijah Muhammad. Am I correct? But in the 60s, man, oh man, that formula started to produce for the arm of Elijah Muhammad. Look how long that man had faith in his teacher. Why he had faith in his teacher? Because his teacher was wise. His teacher saw that the strongest thing in America among the Bilalian people was Jesus. So his teacher told him that I'm Jesus. And Elijah Muhammad accepted Master Farad as Jesus. There was a place in his heart for Jesus. There was a place in every so-called Negro's heart in America for Jesus. So Master Farad said, I'm Jesus. And Elijah Muhammad opened up his heart. Say, yes, you must be Jesus. Because you sound like what I've been looking for and what I've been thinking and what I've been feeling. I can follow you. I couldn't follow my father. But I can follow you, Master Farad. So Elijah came out in his fiery garments with his violent and fiery tongue, turning the altars into fire, the sweet waters of Scripture into fire. Is that right? Challenging the false prophets of the church. Telling Jezebel, come on out of your hiding place, woman. You wicked, filthy, no good, shameful thing. Stop hiding behind your aristocracy and come on out here and let the world see your shame. Is that right? Now Elijah Muhammad, fiery tongue, mean preacher. Is that right? Now, he came and he was kind of, uncivilized. See, that Elijah of the book, brother, he was a little uncivilized, wasn't he? He ordered his men, I think, to go cut the heads off of the false prophets, didn't he? After defeating them, he wasn't satisfied. The man wanted to draw blood, cut the heads off. He was kind of savage, you know. But the book says, before the awful and dreadful day of the Lord, Elijah must come. Is that right? See, if you have had an awful and dreadful time, somebody have to rise up in the spirit of that awful and dreadful time and start doing some awful and dreadful things to awake the mind of that awful and dreadful leadership. This was Elijah. So the book said Elijah must first come. Is that right? All praise due to Allah. But after Elijah comes Christ. Is that right? All right. Christ, he's civilized. He don't flood the rostrum. Elijah said, throw barrels of water on the pulpit. I'm going to turn it into fire. See, Christ didn't come like that. Christ came walking in quietly. Is that right? Came in like the quietness of a tornado that's coming. Comes in quietly, everything is so quiet. And all of a sudden there's thunder and lightning. Christ didn't do it. His presence did it. Is that right? But Christ didn't bring down no thunder and lightning. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. Christ was quiet. Is that right? But his quietness caused a disturbance in the atmosphere that was like the quietness before the storm. So his very presence brought about thunder and lightning and the shaking up of things. Is that right? All praise due to Allah. The predictor said, oh, this is the end. The Nation of Islam is getting ready to go down. That new leader, he's reversing everything his father taught. He's not politically wise. He doesn't know how to pick up the tools of his father and get his people's confidence before doing those strange things. They didn't know that a new man was on the scene. Is that right? So they hadn't been taught like you. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says the one that come after me will be a new man. Say the one that succeeds Master Farad will be a new man. Saying he will do all things in accordance with his own knowledge. Say he won't accept anything of the old. Say he'll change everything and build a totally new world. Is that right? All praise to Allah. All praise to Allah. I wasn't looking for any man to join me. I was looking for empty vessels to put men into. And I found a lot of them in the house of Elijah. Because his job wasn't to put men into empty vessels. His job was to pour out of the vessels that pollution that had been put into them. Is that right? Look what happened now. After so many great leaders made the sign of their life known in the womb by pushing, thrusting their foot into the side of the stomach. You know that baby when it's in the womb and is ready to come out, man, sometimes it hit that woman's belly so hard you see his elbow jutting out. Is that right? Pressing and said, let me out of here, I'm gonna get out of here, you know, it's time to come out. Well, we had leaders like that was hitting the sides of the womb, the belly of this society, and making their presence known. We couldn't see them. Leadership hadn't been established yet, but we saw that there's something in there that was awful strong. Look how long J. Rogers worked with the pen. Look how long he appealed to the minds of our people. All praise is due to Allah. And many others. Hammurabi used to go all over the East Coast, come all in the Midwest with his films and his lectures, trying to bring the birth of Bilalian leadership. Is that right? All of a sudden, God began to give help from within and without. We had our John Browns to help us. We had the Quakers and others. We had a few friends in government. But the season changed. A new season came upon the earth. And the mighty of the world didn't look so mighty anymore. The old Russian bear rose up and began to do things that made himself look as strong and producing miracles as the Western leadership. Then something else developed that was awful power.
Yes. So we said, Salam Alaikum.
Me free.
What we're saying right now is the world is changing. The world is a changing. And at this time, the Muslims are watching and suffering. But the world, as we know it, as we see it, as we're experiencing it, is a changing. Mark my words. See for yourselves. Listen not to propaganda, and view and listen to what little news we're receiving from Al-Quds and Palestine. Listen to the hypocrisy and the hypocrites. Listen to the hypocrisy and the hypocrites. Watch the genocide treatment. And most importantly, watch the motive. It's not Hamas. It's ethnic cleansing. watch and listen to the hypocrisy of the first world nations. The world as we know it, as we see it, and as we've been experiencing it, is a changing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God of all the worlds and all the people, will be the final judge. Fret not those who are looking for vain things. No, don't fret. And we have seen this week some individuals are saying that we Africans should not be supporting or demonstrating and are lending our intelligence and our energy for the Palestinian people because the Palestinian people are racist against black Palestinians. And one person used a verse from the Quran because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, until the people change their self, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change their condition. Leaving it to think from the person who read it was that somehow the Palestinians over 75 years were not adhering to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they were racist against themselves and their fellow human beings that are Habashi, black people. And because of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed them to be persecuted from that time, 1947, 48, until now. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon, sister. And maybe this person is not an AI, but this person is working for somebody. Could be working for themselves. It's very strange that after 3 months, thereabouts, people are counting how sincere African people can be. Are they just watching and thinking the intellectual mindset of the South Africans with a collective body looking at brutality and injustice and file a case, and that is meant to be too much? No black person or black people, African people should be involved with such things. Is that what it is? There is something, but I don't know what AI is supposed to look like when it's in a few human, with a human features. I don't know. But I listen, I watch, and I find it very alarming that a female was chosen, and this female presents themselves as if they were Muslims themselves. We as human beings on this earth, we are good, bad, and totally indifferent. But those of us who are sincere in ourselves and our faith and have a love for humanity, we see sincereness within ourselves. We are ignorant as well, and we're loving and kind. Who is we? Human beings. Human beings. It's not everything that a person should really look at and say somehow is Semitic. Hey, without qualifying what Semitic really is. Now, it's not everything that a person should look at without experiencing and say it is racism. Or this person or that person is racist. This is another illness that goes on with some people who try to think that, who wants to feel that they're helping black people. Someone argues with us in a shop. Maybe they're not giving us the right change. Maybe they don't want, they somehow blank us. Some person turns around and said that the person who is doing this is racist, without justifying and finding out what actions and the reason for the action of the person. We black people, we're not that stupid. Once upon a time, the system wanted us to just shout foul, foul, foul. But we spent years and years and years, and I'm saying we as in my parents' generation, explaining the indignity that they were suffering. And it did not help us. And then this word, popular word, came about. It only showed us the intolerance of the Caucasian people. And it took us many years to stop communicating with all these different agencies and organizations because it was not helping us. So we have learned to use paper trail and find the justified reason for how we are treated, and then go to tribunal courts, etc., etc. We have come a long way in learning a lesson. So we don't want people out there misusing us. Misusing us. We don't want it. We don't want it. I've traveled the Arab world. Not all, but I've traveled the Arab world. And whether they're calling me, they say something derogatory of me or not, I didn't know. And it didn't bother me. I didn't go there thinking and watching people to think if those people are somehow degrading me. No, I went there to enjoy myself. I went there to learn Al-Islam. I went there to view the country. I went there to relax and be willing to learn. Yes, to learn. I didn't go there with some kind of, yo, let me see if these people like me as a black man, you know. Come, listen here. So those people have those type of hang up, keep it to yourselves. The imam the person you just heard earlier on, he taught us that. He instilled that in our consciousness, in our conscience. Because we're humans, we have to live. We have to survive. We have to. And we have to be confident about ourselves. And we have to develop our families. And we have to learn to develop communities and learn to accept responsibilities. Yes. So that's how we have grown. I'm not telling anybody that racism doesn't exist. I'm telling those people, leave it to us. We don't need your help. We don't. Sincerely, we don't. We don't. We don't need people shouting and screaming their mouth off about how this is that and that and that, and they don't experience nothing. You understand? If you saw it, why didn't you use your voice? If you couldn't use your voice in that case, why didn't you pull their cloaks and then instruct them? Come on. And the third one, why didn't you use your heart? Why didn't you use your heart? You pretend, you project that you're a Muslim. But don't you know the Shura of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Did you do those things, or is it hearsay, them say? See, this is it. There are millions of us. And there are thousands of us and hundreds of us that praise together every day. Praise together every day. And there are millions of us, thousands of us, hundreds of us that lead each other in prayer. Please, stop it. Stop it. Find some other thing to do on these multimedia channels. Pray for the people of Palestine. Pray for them. Have a good word. Write to your MP and all these people. Don't try to use racism and black people to just turn around and say somehow what's happening to the Palestinian is justified. Stop it. Stop it. What happened to the people of Bosnia, was that justified? They were Muslims and they were Christians. They were living together for hundreds of years. But all of a sudden, ethnic cleansing and so forth came on the agenda. And hundreds of thousands of people were killed. People who were neighbors and friends and families and uncles and aunties and cousins. There were families. But someone come up with this racism and this prejudice and everything and decided that they didn't want Muslims around them. And what is happening now with Palestine and the UN is what happened with Bosnia. They stood there, they discussed, this one vetoes, that one, and it continued and it continued and it continued. And hundreds and thousands of people were killed. And now the same thing is happening in Palestine. And now America is pretending that they're discussed. They're hypocrites. It's a lie. They're not discussed. And then they're saying we can only take X action. It would take 60 days. 60 days. Do you know what 60 days is? Do you know what 60 days is? Can you count? You're calling people racist. Can you really count? They're prolonging the agony and using verbal lies. And then they're talking that they want to get rid of, wipe Hamas off the face of the earth. Who are they? I mean, are these people like Public Enemy? They're going to run with a cross on their backs and on their front and say, here I am. What are you all listening to? And these are the people that says no to Auschwitz and say never, never again. These are those people. Can you understand what is actually happening here? This is Allah exposing evildoers. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Whether you accept that one or not, use your own eyes, use your own ears, and use every media platform there is to use and see for yourself. Alhamdulillah. We're going off. We'll leave you with Islamic science. That's what we're going to leave you with, Islamic science. You understand? We want to make people understand that Al-Islam is not a mythology. Okay, come in.
Hello and welcome. Today we're going to answer an important question.
في الآونة الأخيرة كثر الحديث عن كلمة التفسير العصري للقرآن. هل معنى هذا أن للقرآن أكثر من تفسير؟
يا سيدي، القرآن كلام الله، وكلام الله صفته، وصفة الكمال في الله لا تتناهى. فلو أن القرآن أعطى كنوزه في عصر محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم لاستقبل بقية القرون بلا عطاء. ويريد الله أن يمتد عطاؤه امتداد دعوته إلى أن تقوم الساعة. ولذلك جاءت الأشياء التي فيه تباعا. كل ما العقل ارتقى نبقى نديله حتة، كل ما العقل ارتقى يبقى نديله حتة، وبذلك يظل عطاء القرآن مستمرا. ثم الكون الذي فيه أسرار وعجائب، هذه الأسرار والعجائب ربنا جعلها مصونة إلى أن تكتشف، وتكتشف ممن؟ من الخلق أنفسهم. عشان ما يقالش انها معمولة عشان توافي الله. فلما تكتشف من الخلق نقوم نعلم ان الذي كان غيبا علينا اصبح مشاهدا. فاذا حدثت عن غيب غيره ابقى صدقه، لان حصل ان غيب وانا صدقته. نعم.
One thing to keep in mind that is very important to this issue.
ولا داعي لأن نسأل طبعا في هذا المجال ما هو أفضل تفسير، لأنه طبعا
لا، ما فيش القرآن. لو أن الإنسان يبيح لنفسه أن يفسر القرآن لكنا تركنا القرآن ليفسره من أنزل عليه. وما دام هو، لأنه لو فسره ما نقدرش نتعتع، يبقى حاجة على العقول، والعقول ما تطيقش، لأن لو حدثهم بأشياء زي اللي بتحدث الآن كانوا ينصرفوا عن الدعوة.
Yes, you heard that correctly. Think about that for a moment.
في الواقع البحث في النشأة ليس محظورا على المسلم، والناس عندها فهم خاطئ. لما الواحد يبتدي يتكلم في التطور يواجه بتشنجات عنيفة جدا وحرام وما يصحش وغلط وتجديف، لكن ده فهم مش صحيح. ليه؟ لأن الموقف القرآني على العكس. يعني المسلم ليس فقط لا يوجد حظر عليه في مسألة البحث في النشأة، لكن ده مأمور. يعني على العكس، ومتصورين ان القرآن عمل حظر على البحث في نقطة التطور. بقول لهم لا، القرآن بالعكس أمر الإنسان بالبحث. قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف بدأ الخلق. ربنا بيأمر أمر صريح بالسير في الأرض وجمع الشواهد لنعرف ونصل إلى كيف بدأ الخلق.
Now here's another fact that might surprise you.
فإذا ما فيش حرمة أبدا. المسألة مش بس حلال، ده واجبة. مهما شطح بك التفكير فكر واجتهد. لا تحجير على البحث في الإسلام ولا تحجير على العلم، وليس في الإسلام بابوية ولا كهانة.
One thing to keep in mind that is very important to this issue.
الباب مفتوح للاجتهاد، ولا داعي للشجار، لأن ربنا أمرنا، هو سبحانه وتعالى أمرنا. قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف بدأ الخلق. معناها المسألة فيها نظر، ومعناها إن إحنا في شرعية كاملة للبحث في هذا الموضوع مهما شطح بك التفكير ومهما أدت بك الشواهد والاستقراءات. وفي النهاية زي ما قلت، لا تحجير على العلم في الإسلام ولا تحجير على البحث ولا بابوية ولا كهانة. وبهذه الروح اللي هي روح عشق الحقيقة وعشق العلم والفناء للوصول إلى الصدق بجميع الوسائل، هي دي روح الإسلام. وده اللي نحب نطلع بيه من هذه الحلقة، إن احنا نتعلم الروح الرياضية، حب العلم والتسامح، ونعرف تمام إن ده هو روح الإسلام. وإن يوم ما اتنين بيختلفوا في العلم مش معناها واحد مؤمن وواحد كافر أبدا. ده صميم الإسلام، إن احنا نختلف في صراعنا وفي محاولاتنا إن احنا نوصل إلى الحقيقة، وكلنا بنحاول ننفذ أمر الله سبحانه وتعالى. قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف بدأ الخلق.
Think about that for a moment. Nothing more, nothing less. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to answer an important question.
في الآونة الأخيرة كثر الحديث عن كلمة التفسير العصري للقرآن. هل معنى هذا أن للقرآن أكثر من تفسير؟
يا سيدي، القرآن كلام الله، وكلام الله صفته، وصفة الكمال في الله لا تتناهى. فلو أن القرآن أعطى كنوزه في عصر محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم لاستقبل بقية القرون بلا عطاء. ويريد الله أن يمتد عطاؤه امتداد دعوته إلى أن تقوم الساعة. ولذلك جاءت الأشياء التي فيه تباعا. كل ما العقل ارتقى نبقى نديله حتة، كل ما العقل ارتقى يبقى نديله حتة، وبذلك يظل عطاء القرآن مستمرا. ثم الكون الذي فيه أسرار وعجائب، هذه الأسرار والعجائب ربنا جعلها مصونة إلى أن تكتشف، وتكتشف من الخلق أنفسهم، عشان ما يقولش إنها معمولة عشان توافي الله. فلما تكتشف من الخلق نقوم نعلم أن الذي كان غيبا علينا أصبح مشاهدا. فإذا حدثت عن غيب غيره أبقى أصدقه، لأن حصل إن غيب وأنا صدقته.
One thing to keep in mind that is very important to this issue.
ولا داعي لأن نسأل طبعا في هذا المجال ما هو أفضل تفسير، لأنه طبعا
لا، ما فيش القرآن. لو أن الإنسان يبيح لنفسه أن يفسر القرآن لكنا تركنا القرآن ليفسره من أنزل عليه. وما دام هو، لأنه لو فسره ما نقدرش نتعتع.
This is Al-Islam. Assalamu alaikum. Don't forget, spread the news. Support our efforts. And when we complete what we're doing, you'll be able to contact us and have conversations with us and ask some questions based on what is relevant that we'll be discussing or portraying. So may God forgive us any of our faults, knowingly and unintentionally or unknowingly. And may God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help all of us in this earth. But the world is a changing. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.